Well, I'm so excited to talk to you. I love the comic shop. It was a great film. Before we get into that, though, here by Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passions. Where your passion to be a filmmaker, storyteller kind of come from? You led you on this amazing journey.
Oh, well, I mean, honestly, I was a huge Star Wars fan growing up. And so that sort of storytelling and mythology was something that I, really delved into and just sort of embraced everything about it. And then it got me into like just being a film critic and watching tons of movies. And, I guess I've just really always loved storytelling. And no matter what it is, like I have kind of an insatiable appetite for watching movies. So
Nice. Well, what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
I don't really like choose favorites as such. I mean, I will say like, I grew up more in the prequel era. So like I started as of course a fan of the originals, just like anyone. And, I think that I think it's sometimes funny because the movies that come out when you're younger become like your Star Wars movies in some
Yeah.
ways. And I knew like when I was younger and all the old generations, like, all the prequels suck, and it was like wait 20 years, and we have, and 20 years later, people are like, oh man, the sequels suck. The prequels are great, but man, the sequels are terrible.
I was thinking about that the other day because I remember I got so much flack when Phantom Menace came out, and I was like, I still really enjoyed that movie. And was like,
Yeah, me too.
oh, and like, no, it was great,
I know
Now
it
it's
was
like,
it was very different. It was an interesting experience because people who were more like I don't know why I was thinking my wife's uncle, but he's kind of one of the ultimate like prequel haters.
uh,
And I was when Phantom Menace came out, I was 16. I
hmm,
talked to probably like 30 people in my class. There was only one kid who didn't like it. Like everybody liked it except for him.
yeah.
And then you go talk to the older adults, and like all of them were like, "Oh, it was awful. Just awful." It was like it was very much like that kind of generational thing. And I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
thinking, once those 8-year-olds who saw Phantom Menace are 28-year-olds or 30-year-olds, they're gonna have an opinion. And it's going to be
Yeah.
on the internet. So that was kind of funny to me. It's like now we have the people who are just like little kids when the prequels came out, and they're online being like, "These are great movies. These are the movies from my childhood."
No, I will defend Revenge of the Sith forever.
Yeah, me
I think
too.
that a lot of it is the build up between episodes one and two to that point. So it's
I
some of the best Star Wars lines in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. So I was very fortunate to I did like a father-son trip to see the charity screening of Revenge of the Sith when it had come out a week early. And so I tend to see the Star Wars movies like a billion times in theaters. So by the time like the movie actually opened, I had went a week, without seeing it. And I was just jonesing to go see it again.
Yeah.
So I remember those standing in line feeling like really kind of smug about it because
Yeah, like I've already seen this.
everyone in line was like, "Oh man, I can't wait to see this movie. I hope it's good." And I'm like, "It's good. I've seen it." And then they're like, "What? But this is the first showing." And I'm like, "Well, it's the first public showing." It was
Yeah.
like screened for charity up in Seattle a week ago. And they were like, "What? No way!" It was really fun though. I had a lot of fun. Just I always try to take advantage of like a lot of the special Star Wars events, whether it's Star Wars celebrations or I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
going in '97. I convinced my parents to bring me to the Magic of Myth, a Smithsonian exhibit,
Mhm.
which was really fun. My parents agreed, but they said, so we can spend one day going to the Smithsonian, but then all the rest of the days we're going to go to like Civil War battlefields and go to
Oh,
the Washington Monument. And so it's going to be an educational trip. I'm like, oh, that's fine. That's fine. Like, as long as I get to see the Star Wars exhibit,
yeah. No, I grew up in Maryland. We went to it. It was awesome. Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, it was a lot
Seeing
of
the
fun.
giant Star Destroyer model was like one of the coolest things.
Oh, that was really cool. I remember that. Yeah, I was just like so enamored by everything there. And they even, published that hardcover. Well, I guess it was soft cover too, but that book, The Magic of Myth, with all the Smithsonian stuff in it. That was a kind of neat companion.
I love it. Well, let's take our nerd talk into the comic.
Yeah,
I feel like that's what kind of talk about the inspiration and the story of the comic.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a number of inspirations. I think that what really led it is when I was a kid growing up, I loved going to comic shops, and I would get my mom, I would drag her to comic stores probably at least once a week.
Yeah.
And she was such a trooper. So we did have a whole list of stores we would sort of go to. And, when you're trying to find stuff, and sometimes you got to go to a couple stores. But I did sort of develop a relationship with one of the guys
Mm.
at a specific store, and his name actually was Mike.
Oh, okay. I
So,
guess this is going now. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes like you should change the name, but at the same time, I mean, he had changed the last name.
Yeah,
But
exactly. No, I think it's good you kept the mic. Yeah.
And I don't know, he always just, I guess he always felt like a Mike to me. So I was like, he's got to be that. So I would go there year after year. And at first it kind of started out like, I'm getting closer to him, and he was an awesome, comic dealer or whatever. And sort of as time went on, he wasn't there quite as often. Like he would have an employee, and the employee would say, "Well, he's out today. He's got an appointment. He's gone." And I mean, it was kind of weird. And finally, one of the employees said, "Oh, he's drinking across the street." And you can tell for an employee to like throw someone under the bus, like they must have been annoyed at. This must be a regular thing.
Mhm.
So, I kind of noticed that, and then the store was kind of going downhill, and before long, it closed. I remember that. I hadn't talked to him a bunch, and we went there, and it was just closed.
Mm.
So I was able to only figure out from one of the other store owners that they heard he was driving for UPS. And that was the end of that. So as an adult, I started to think, I don't know what made me think about that, but all the good times I had at the comic store. And I thought, gosh, what if I wrote a script and wrote Mike the happy ending that he didn't get? Like,
Yeah.
and I think the movie was also my way of kind of grappling with this as an adult, not understanding when you're a kid. I don't know what that means, like drinking across the street.
Yeah,
What,
exactly.
what would lead someone to do that, or what? I mean, was the store not doing well, and so he was drinking, or was the drinking causing the store not to do well? Who knows?
Mm.
And so then that's why I came up with the idea, like maybe the comic store wasn't Mike's dream. Like maybe there was something more that he really wanted to do.
Mm.
And so that was very much like the kid versus adult, right? Because when
Yeah.
you're a kid, you think, oh man, owning a comic store, that would be like the coolest thing ever. Like I couldn't imagine. I was like, this is the job I want to do. I want to own a comic store one day.
No, no,
And
now as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, the pay
yeah.
to do, the rent.
Oh yeah,
You don't think
exactly.
about that yeah, stuff as a kid, though. Yeah.
No, not at all. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. And so when you're an adult, you're realizing like, yeah, I mean, this is a business. Like it's not fun and games. Like it's cool. There's comics there, but like you said, I mean, there's all the accounting to do, or bookkeeping, and all the inventory and keeping up with what you're supposed to be buying, and the whole thing is a lot of work. So then what I also did is I took myself and kind of superimpose me on Mike, so that Mike is really a mix of the real Mike is just kind of like a leaping off point, I guess. And then there's the fictional part, and then there's me. And so for me, I had directed my first feature in my 20s, and then it didn't really go where I wanted it to go. Like I was very proud of it, but
Mhm.
we just didn't get somewhere that allowed me to take the next step.
Yeah.
And so year after year passes, and I'm doing my corporate video work, which is sort of like my day job,
Mm.
and just thinking like this isn't what I want to do. Like it's fine as like a money making thing, but it isn't my passion.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now I'm headed, towards my 40s at this point, and it's like, when am I going to get another chance? And so that was kind of like where Mike is at that point, where he's
Okay.
like, when do I get another chance to? But he's almost given up on it. He really
Oh
has.
yeah, yeah. No, you
So,
really showcase that because he's a artist himself in there, and originally that's what he wanted to get into, and then the comic shop was like a side thing that eventually turned into thing. But yeah, he's always drinking across the street.
yeah, and I did throw. There are little things too there, like how his dad, who was dying, like has gifted him the money to open the store. So
Mhm.
he also feels kind of like it's hard to walk away from something where it's almost like, was this my dad's dying wish? Or like, even if it wasn't his dying wish, it was his last like nice act, and maybe there's a sense like he's tied to the place. Um, and I know for me, I actually got the idea for my corporate work from my dad as well,
Oh,
because
okay.
I had moved down to LA, and just like a lot of people, like I'm gonna learn how to do film, and we'll just figure it out from there.
Mhm.
And my dad's very practical. He's a businessman. He's in real estate, and so he was like, "Well, son, how are you gonna make a living doing this?" And I'm like, I don't know because I don't even know how to make movies yet or do anything. So why don't you like stop asking me that when I've only been down in LA for like 2 months, you know?
Yeah.
So then he kind of brought up, well, son, businesses always need videos. And this could be an opportunity. You could do video for business. And it was very new at that point. It was 2007 and 2008 is when my company was founded.
Okay.
I had another company briefly before, similar kind of concept. And he was right. It was a good opportunity. It was something that, I'm proud that I did, but it's also like it was really just supposed to pay the bills, not be like a career lifetime or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. I feel
Um
on that.
the plan the
Working
plan
Disney when I'm not doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And so I tried to use my time on the side to write scripts. Like this one was one I'd actually written it back in 2018.
Oh, okay.
It kind of like revised in 2020. And then this thing comes about. Like I didn't anticipate making this movie when we did. I just happened to have lunch with the producer of my first movie,
Oh,
and we started talking. I had about 6 scripts, and we were talking about getting the first movie back on streaming. That was actually the original reason for the phone call.
yeah.
So that was kind of funny, and then that led us to like him asking, well, do you have any scripts we could make? And I was like, I mean, I guess I have one that we could probably afford. Like, we could probably make that work. And so I kind of told him the idea, and he's like, okay, great, let's do it. And I'm like right now, or I mean, and he's like, yeah, what else are you doing? I'm like, I, I don't know. I guess nothing. Like,
It's
it was
Well, it's
kind of
funny
like,
as a filmmaker. I mean, I've done some stuff in the past, but watching a movie, I was like, well, I guess this probably was easy to shoot because you don't use a lot of locations. So,
right, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have the
So,
comic shop at the most place. I think you have the bar. You obviously
right.
put up a San Diego Comic Con set, and then I think the bowling alley was like the other thing.
Yeah, the bowling alley was okay. So the bowling alley was tricky, and it was only tricky because the schedule. I mean, these things like sometimes in a vacuum, they should be easy, but
Oh,
basically
I'm
what
sorry. You had
happened.
the other comic shop. I wanted to ask where that one was because it had a giant AT-AT in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, okay, that place is
The
awesome.
corporate
So
one, yeah.
yeah, so that was I'm why am I blanking on it all of a sudden? But I know the store. There's a couple branches in the Southern California area as
Okay.
well, and it's owned by the drummer of System of a Down, the rock band.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And and I liked System of a Down. Like I don't can't say I actively like followed after a while, but I thought that was pretty neat. And when we walked in, and yeah, they've got this life-size AT-AT. They've got the Silver Surfer that was there. And what's really neat is like the ceiling tiles it looks like the sky, but with like X-wings there, and then
Oh,
Superman flying by. And then they put all their rare comics in like the Gotham Vault.
wow.
And so you walk into the vault room, and there's like a $60,000 comic in there. There's 20 and all this stuff. And as soon as we walked in, I was like, this is it. This is the location. For me, I've never seen a comic store that's like better than this. Maybe there's another one that's bigger, sure. But like as well designed and as like high end as this thing looked. And so I was like, we have to have it. The kind of funny part is it cost more to film at that location for one day than it did to film in 8 days at our regular
Oh,
shop.
really?
It was really pricey, but I was like, well, we need it because
Yeah,
this movie it's kind of like picture that the rival comic store is the Death Star. And it has
exactly.
to seem
That's what
like
looked good.
so yeah, like it has to seem so obviously better than Mike's that Mike is screwed. Like he's in
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah.
And if it's just I thought if it's just a little bit better, then what's the big deal? Like Mike can, he can outcompete that. But
Yeah.
when you see like a life-size AT-AT, and you saw Mike's store is kind of like it's kind of a pile of crap. Like it's
Absolutely.
not very nice, you know.
Uh,
So, but yeah, the locations weren't too tough. So the bowling thing, the deal is that because we had so few filming days, it had to be in the same location where we could stage the San Diego Comic Con scenes. So
okay.
we needed a large convention space, but we also needed the bowling alley from the same location because we didn't have time to move that day. So we did find a place. We had an original bowling alley like with the convention space drop out because our co-lead Brandon was only 20 years old. And so
Wow.
they said, well, he can't be on the casino grounds. He's not 21 years old.
Oh,
And we're trying to tell him like it's a closed set. It's there's not going to be anyone drinking.
yeah.
But they wouldn't have it. So we moved on and we did find somewhere. But I swear we locked that location like 3 days before the last week of filming.
Oh, wow.
We were scouting the location on both weekends, basically, before we were shooting. So it was pretty nerve-wracking. I was like, are we going to have a location to shoot at? Like, are we getting this done, Indie filmmaking, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, for an indie film, you got a great cast. I mean, you got Jesse Metcalfe as Mike. You have some great cameos like Eric Roberts, Carrot Top.
Yeah.
How'd you get everyone involved?
Um, that's funny. So Jesse was the first, he was the linchpin. And then once we got him, we could go into pre-production and kind of go from there because he was the sort of presence where it's like, okay, Jesse's like a big enough name. He can promote the movie.
Yeah.
He will be of at least some interest to distributors.
Mhm.
We knew it wasn't like Jesse's gonna, oh, I don't know, move the needle and guarantee a sale. But we were already talking to a distributor who's like, yeah, Jesse checks the boxes, for that. And the cameos, I don't know, like they kind of came about. I guess our casting director, had made some of these happen, and they were really fun. Like they had asked me, "Oh, do you want Eric Roberts to do a cameo?" And I'm like, "Of course, yeah, of course. That sounds amazing, but how? Like, what do we do there?" And they're like, "Oh, we know Eliza and his manager and wife and whatnot." So he actually submitted a video audition, if you can believe
Oh,
that.
really?
I mean, and we couldn't believe it because of course we're gonna, if you want to do it, of course the cameo is yours.
Yeah.
And he still submitted an audition for it. So I was like, okay, even if he doesn't do this, like I'm gonna keep that video audition because it was really funny. And I think that's, for me, it's still one of the funniest scenes in the movie, just because he's like so kooky.
I know. He's like, I'm raising your rent.
Right? And so we'll like do all the time, like basically in the movie he says inflation. Woo!
Yeah.
And so my wife and I do that all the time. Like a couple of the other people in the movie, anytime someone says to me, "Oh, the price of food is so crazy," we go, "Inflation." Woo! It's really funny, like just little things like that. And the Carrot Top one, I was excited about that too because they had mentioned like, "Oh, this might be a possibility. Maybe, we're going to see if he would do it." And I thought, for a movie set in Vegas, having like someone like that, a Vegas icon who's been on the strip for 20 years or so,
Yeah.
would really be neat. And would make it feel more Vegasy that like, yeah, Carrot Top could just walk into your store because he's a comic fan.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that whole scene, they improv'd it. Like I didn't really come up with any of that. I had the rough idea that, well, he's here to pick up some comics, but him and Jesse and Carrot Top came up with this whole thing, and they had us absolutely dying. It was a little different each time they did it. And the first one, it was so funny, but it was like F this, F that. It was constant swearing. And so of course I'm like dying of laughter. But then the producers come over to me and they're like whispering like, "Get it PG, get it
Yeah.
PG here." I'm like, "Oh, but it's so funny this way." And so then we kind of toned it down more until like, we have like one word at the end of, Carrot Top's thing, but it's pretty tame. Still funny though, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can only have a certain amount of cuss words before it jumps up to rated.
Yeah, we were just like, because you don't know where this movie might go, and so
Yeah,
like you don't necessarily want it to be like 50 F words that then maybe a distributor really likes it, but it's like, dude, you got to cut these things, you know. So if I think we have a couple F words, but if even if we had to cut them, it wouldn't be a big deal. Like it would probably take very little time.
well, how'd you find your young Brandon? I mean, he said he was only 20. I was like, he was a really good actor for that age.
Yeah, yeah. So that was so important to the movie. I had a lot of discussions where it was like, you guys, you have to understand that this person is acting against Jesse the whole movie. If they're not good,
Yeah.
the whole thing is just gonna fall apart. It's gonna be bad.
Mhm.
And so I was like, the importance of this be like a good natural actor who can pull this off and act in these scenes with Jesse. And I told him another thing. I said, please do not show me 28-year-olds who are supposed to be playing 15.
Yeah.
I see that all the time and it drives me nuts because I know when I'm watching that this person's not 15 years old. And so they did show me a couple. I saw it as we were casting. I'm like, what is this? I said, this guy looks like he's 35. Like, why are you showing me this guy? He's got his 5 o'clock shadow going hard, and he's like all big and it just didn't make sense. So when they showed me the picture, that's the first thing I saw. No reel, just a picture of Micah. And he's real small, and he looks like he's 15 or 16, not 20 in the movie. You know, it's crazy. So I said, this is how I pictured it. Like, this is really good. And then somehow that went to us casting him, which I don't know how this happened. I still don't know. But basically the casting director sends back and it's like, oh, it's so great you like Micah. Like, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I like the look of Micah. And then the producer said, oh, okay, he signed the deal or whatever. He's agreed to be in the movie. And I'm like, wait, I didn't even see a reel. I just saw the picture. How did this get here? And they're like, wait, you didn't see the reel? I'm like, no one sent me a reel. Is there a reel? And like, oh, I thought you saw it. That's why So then finally I got the reel like about a day or two later. And I was like, oh, please be good. Please be good. And we still could have backed out, but it was just, it would have been awkward. And so then I saw the reel and I was like, oh, okay, thank God he's good, you know? And so he said, well, we're going to have a Zoom call with him and Jesse just to see the rapport and make sure that, they hit it off. And after we did that, we asked, okay, what's the verdict, Jesse? And Jesse's like, oh, I like him. He's good. Yeah, we should definitely go with him. And
Oh, cool.
the rest was kind of history, and he was great. The only note that I ever had for him when I was directing was pretty much Micah, speak up. Because Jesse kind of has a booming voice, right? Like he kind of dominates and takes over.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you want Brandon to be a little more shy as a character, but he really like, well, Micah, can't hear you. Speak up a bit. And so it finally got to the point where when I started walking towards Micah, I'd be halfway there and he's like, louder, and I'm like, yeah, you got it. And then I would just turn around and go back to the director's chair because I already knew what I was going to tell him. But he was so great though, and really a lot of fun to work with.
No, yeah, him and Jesse's on-screen chemistry was great, and so was Tristan Mays, who plays Alex, was like kind of like the love interest. I love the whole backstory between them, and then like she ends up going working for the rival corporate bookstore. How'd you find her? She was great.
So Tristan, I think in a lot of ways that's my favorite casting story, just because it was one that like I brought to the table instead of it being presented options and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we had made a couple offers, and the first option that we had was kind of one that I definitely was into the idea, but it didn't pan out. So we're kind of sitting there brainstorming like who could be good, and also who could we afford? Like, we have some money, but we can't go get like Jennifer Lawrence over here. You know? So what are we looking at? And I started thinking about like during the pandemic, and during some very dark times where I was just killing time. And I was like, I love MacGyver as a kid. That was one of my favorite shows. I actually had like my swim schedule around that, where I would wake up, watch MacGyver at 10 a.m., go swimming. There was another rerun at 5 p.m. on the USA Network, I think. And so it was like my day was like scheduled around MacGyver reruns in the
That's
summer.
awesome. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I should check out this reboot, I guess. I mean, it's not going to be the original, but why not? At least, what else am I doing,
Yeah.
So I start working my way through the seasons, and I remember vividly thinking, like, during this time, like, when am I going to get to direct something again? Like, or when are any of us going to get out and be able to do something? Because this pandemic just dragging on.
Yeah.
So that made me think of Tristan because she was so great in that show. And she kind of had the look I wanted for an Alex, like
Mhm.
almost that sort of, oh, I don't know, maybe like, yeah, gamer girl, like hacker kind of aesthetic or something. Like not your girly girl type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I asked the producer, I said, well, have you guys heard of Tristan Mays? And one of them was like, oh yeah, no, I know who Tristan is. Yeah, she's good. And was like, well, I don't know if is she too big, or I mean, would she say yes maybe? And because I'm just thinking like she was the lead of MacGyver, so I'd have no concept of what that's gonna cost. And so we made her the offer, and she accepted within about 48 hours. And
That's
she's
so
like, no, I'm not doing anything else. Like, let's do it. And I
oh,
was really excited because it was also kind of weird and cool when, especially in TV, when you see someone over and over and over again,
yeah.
and then you meet them in person. It's like it's a little weird at first. It's a little surreal. You're like, oh, here you are. you know I think maybe for me there wasn't as much of that with Jesse because i hadn't I hadn't seen as many of his projects before we brought him on. And then I did watch everything he was in more or less. I didn't go watch Desperate Housewives. I'd seen a little, I'd seen clips here and there, but I went and saw every movie he had done.
Mhm.
Just as a director, I think that's like a good part of the homework to kind of see what you're working with. And I was very excited too, as I was probably about halfway through Jesse's movies. And I remember I had a big smile on my face and I thought, this guy can really act. He hasn't always been put in projects that are the greatest projects. But as you see the movies, I'm like, but he brings it. Like, I didn't have any question about that. And so I thought, I think that he's capable of a lot more than he's usually asked to do. You put him in an action movie, he's Mr. Buff action star. You put him in a Hallmark thing and he's, Mr. Heartthrob. But
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times he's not given enough opportunity to show the range that he can display. And I thought, well, if nothing else, Comic Shop's gonna put him through the paces because he's in almost every scene of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. He shows great range in it too. It's great.
Yeah,
But
I really like that.
yeah, well, you use a lot of comics in it. I mean, I don't know if they're made up or not, or they're friends of yours that do like indie comics. Like, I know
Yeah.
you use Marvel or DC for like filmmaking. Could you give plugs to any artists or works that are in the movie?
Yeah, so we have a character called Technoman who's kind of like almost like a central fictional character in the movie. And I had Technoman created. Was a guy named Travis Stevens.
Okay.
And Travis had I don't want to like speak for him, but he had kind of a Mike like story.
Mhm.
So when I had looked through all these artist portfolios to hire him, thought this is the guy. I mean, he really was talented. And so we started talking, and he had quit his job at Walmart to pursue comic illustrating like full time.
Wow.
And so he's like, so this story means a lot to me because I basically am Mike. Like he's
Yeah.
like, I quit my job so I could do this, thing I was passionate about. And so then for the rest of the comics, like a lot of the product placement you see, I reached out to a bunch of independent comic publishers and just kind of said, hey, look, we're doing this movie and it's about comics, but it really has a big focus on indie comics. And I want to show real indie comics from real companies. So this would be a great opportunity to like showcase some of your guys' stuff. And, that was, it was really fun actually. Like just seeing all this stuff that I don't really see. And everybody was pretty generous about sending us a bunch. The only one that was kind of a friend connection is Dark Horse Comics. So we did have a lot of Dark Horse stuff. And I know they're less on the indie side, like they
Yeah.
had the Star Wars license, so clearly. But my dad is good friends with Mike Richardson, who started Dark Horse,
Oh, that's
and he was
cool.
actually at my wedding. So it was kind of one of those like funny things where I was like, okay, I Mike has to give me some Dark Horse comics. And this isn't to throw Mike under the bus. He's a very busy man. But the funniest part is I had to bug Mike more to get the Dark Horse stuff than I had to bug any of the other publishers, even though I didn't know them. So, and that's how it goes sometimes. And I finally am like texting my dad. I'm like, Mike's not sending back. Like, where is he? And my dad's like, look, Mike is making like 20 movies right now, and he's busy. And but no, they were very generous too. So that was great.
Very cool. So what's the latest on where the movie's gonna be at, where people can watch it, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so we're just finishing the deliverables right now, which for people who don't know is everything from closed captioning to contracts and all your clearances, and just to make sure for the distributor that their butt is covered.
Yeah.
There's an emissions insurance. It's like you're not done spending money and basically getting stuff done until this thing is like delivered. So basically, we have the distributor. Once they have all the deliverables, which will be in about a week, then they'll be able to go out to streamers and see where who wants it, where does this thing land. So I'm excited about that, but I don't know exactly when. We're really thinking it's probably going to be March or April, but I'm thinking that spring area. It's going to take a couple months to not only like find the streamer, but then put it on their schedule. And you never know. Like one streamer might want to get it up quickly, and another one might be like, "Oh, we can slot this thing in on April 29," and you're like, "All right, I guess."
Yeah, it's not in your hands at that point. But is there
Right.
like a website or social media wise we can stay up to date, either for you personally or for the comic shop?
Yeah, so what I did is I launched a website, directorbowen.com, Bowen like Bowen, and I'm also at Director Bowen on Instagram. So I'm trying to keep my website updated with anything that comes out about the comic shop, even podcast appearances or just anything to keep. So if somebody wants to like follow what's going on, it will be there. Or they can follow me on Instagram if they prefer that. But I actually have a couple of the actors who don't have social media. And so I thought I got to make a website where anyone, even like my dad, can go access it. But yeah.
Well, Jonathan, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I love the comic shop. Can't wait to see more stuff down the line for you. So let's keep in touch, all right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me and for checking it out. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I'm gonna have all social media links down below. You can follow Jonathan's journey going forward. And take care, my friend.